to Coast AM. Connie Willis here. Hey, thanks to those of you that are signing up for my show and signing up for, got a lot of new members just in, and as well as people signing up for the newsletter. But hey, take the risk, go for it, jump on it. Come on, ConnieWillis.com. That's where you can find me, ConnieWillis.com. Heading back to Eric, the mind control guy, born and raised in Ventura County, California, veteran that served in the U.S. Army. Stationed in Fort Bragg in 1984, and claims they went to work on me in June of 84. So Eric, you were in the middle of something. I definitely want for you to finish that, and then I've got a whole bunch of other questions for you.
Okay, yes. Anyway, when I had that flashback when I was sleeping, and the lady I was with had to wake me up, and I didn't know, what it was. I mean, all I know is I saw this, sadistic, twisted, like a mad scientist doctor, and he had this long tube that was about 4 inches or so wide, and it was good 3 to 4 foot long. It was full of live spiders, and they dumped it on me. And I was in this box, and basically what they were trying to do is they were trying to make a whether it was a drug, and eventually ended up being a microchip, and it was to ensure that you had no fear, no matter what happened, no matter what situation they'd put you in there. It was absolutely no fear. And after a while, when things started coming back, there was an embroidery store downstairs from the apartment building I was living in, and I started having these jackets made. And it would say U.S. Army Project Mars Mind Control Survivor 1984-1986. And being that I was a truck driver and I used to drive all over the place, well, there is a lot of prior military who are in the trucking business. Yeah, and there's a lot of guys out here who were ex-Special Forces, ex-SEALs, Army Rangers, every kind of echelon of the military you can think of are out here driving truck. And I started meeting some of these people. And the very first guy that opened up to me, I was in a truck stop, I believe it was up in Wisconsin, and he was reading a jacket, and so we just started talking. Well, come to find out, this guy was a former Special Forces Ranger. And we got to talking about the different, I was telling him anyway, I opened up about the different tests they did to us. Well, come to find out, at least in those days, from what this gentleman who told me he was a former Special Forces Ranger, he said back in those days, the very things that they did us in the Mars Project, these guys went through in Ranger School. The only difference was we weren't aware of it, and they were. And when I told them about the spiders and, about the snakes and all this different stuff, he goes, yeah, they did that to us. In fact, they had handcuffed him, and he was put in a crate. And one time they had dumped a bunch of spiders on him, and another time they dumped a whole bunch of snakes on him. And just to check your fear factor, because some folks, they might be able to get out here and, bench press 500 pounds and, 5th-degree black belt and every martial arts you can think of, but they're completely terrified of spiders or snakes or bees or any of that kind of stuff. And one of the tests they had done to us that involved bees, one of the guys that he was in Ranger School with said his fellow that he went through Ranger School with was either had an allergic. I think he said he was allergic to bees, and he said it didn't matter. And what they had is they had this box, and it was chock full of bees, and they put it over your head to test your fear factor. And to me, that's just pretty twisted. But the people that go into the Rangers or the SEALs or Special Forces, any of those what I refer to as tough guy schools, and I never went to any of them. Hell, I never even went to airborne school. But these guys have a serious job, and they're going to have to be able to function on a very calm level, and they have to be able to maintain. They're not,
and not be. I'm thinking not to be detected if they were sent somewhere. I mean, even the littlest little energy, tip they're trying to keep that from happening, correct? Where just the smallest thing.
Yeah, these guys, they have to be able to do what they need to do without any fear of any kind, whether it be being detected or what the situation is. So they would put those guys, and they would put us in just all kinds of horrific things. In fact, one of the ones he told me. Now I don't remember being put through this test. This is one that he told me when he was in Ranger School, and he said they had this cage, and they had 4 full-grown live tigers that hadn't eaten in about 3 or 4 days. And he said his instructor threw him in there and shut the door to check his fear factor. And, of course, tigers are going to have lunch. And now this is the part, and we all can see on YouTube today where they show portions of Ranger School, SEALs, Special Forces, and all that. And they'll show the guys running with their rucksacks and doing all kinds of PT and out there doing log drills and all. But the fear factor phase is the part that's never acknowledged to the public.
Right. So what happened with the guy, the lion in the cage? What did he say happened?
What he told me was they threw him in, and I guess he didn't spend very long in there because I guess he showed no fear to the tigers.
Because he's alive, right? And he's telling you.
Yeah,
so.
He's alive, and he told me.
He made it. He made it.
Yeah, there was a buddy of mine that I was in the service with. He had made a career out of it. He did 21 years, I think, and he had been to Ranger School. And so he was verifying what this other guy had told me. And things that I had remembered through the Mars Project, he had said, yeah, when they was in Ranger School, they went through a lot of those things. And you're just going like, wow. I mean, when it all started coming back, I had no idea what I was remembering. I didn't know.
Well, you were just going in to get into the Army, right? You were just like, hey, how old were you? And you said, I'm just getting into the Army.
I was 17 years old when I went in the service, and I graduated basic on my 18th birthday. And
wow.
That was kind of nice. And so
how'd you get in at 17, dude? Aren't you supposed to be 18?
Dad signed me up.
and with a parental consent, that can happen.
Yeah.
Well, so let me ask this. Does your dad have any, for you to just sign up, your dad gets you in there, however that happens, but you're in there, you're just I'm getting into the Army, okay, la, la, la. But, to be put into where you've been put in there, why did they pick you? And does your dad have any history of any type of military or anything? You know how sometimes there's that tie-in. Did you have that with your dad?
Well, Dad was in the Marines. He went in at 18 years old, and he was in back in the 50s during the Korean conflict. And Dad was a wireman. He worked with telephones. He was in electronics. That's what he did. And then later on, he went to college. He went to work for DOD. Then he worked for, I think, 10 or 11 months at NASA. And he came back to DOD.
Yeah.
And
makes a little sense, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, folks go in the service all the time, but not everybody gets subjected to what I was subjected to and the others.
Yeah, why? Why you?
Apparently, when they were doing these projects and they have these specialized psychiatrists, and when you take the ASVAB test, I mean, everybody's going to give, different answers. And then the whole time, you're in basic, you're being evaluated. And I guess it's not always the drill sergeants. They have people from afar observing you, how you conduct yourself, how you interact with others, and you're profiled. And they say, well, let's check this guy out and bring him in. And I can tell you a couple of different instances. One involved a guy that I was in with Fort Bragg. Now, to back up a little bit, later on after I got out, and the lady who I told you a little bit ago that had to wake me up, I had went over to her place one time, and her uncle was there. And her uncle looked at me, and he wasn't sure what he was looking at. Well, come to find out, this feller, he is now passed on, so I can tell everybody who he was. He was a U.S. Air Force Staff Sergeant. Sergeant Gray was his name. And he was in charge of the security for the projects. And at first, he had told her, he goes, I don't like that guy. He goes, get him out here. I don't want him around. She's like, what did he do to you? Well, what it was all about, which he later on told me after I started talking to him, when he realized I was remembering what happened, was when him and the other security personnel had to stand by and watch what was going on. Now, if things got out of hand, they intervened. But he had told me that he had put away a lot of alcohol over the years trying to forget all that horrible stuff that happened, and then all of a sudden here I resurface and starts bringing it all back. And it just didn't bring it all back, but I was remembering what was happening, and I was asking questions. And he knew that legally there's a lot of things that he couldn't say. Most of the time he would say, I can't say. Sometimes he would open up and talk to me about things, and other times he wouldn't even acknowledge I asked a question. And I'm like, this is getting irritating. So one day I called him up, and I said, what did they threaten you guys with? He said, we were told that if it was discovered that we had ever been talking about any of this stuff, even if it was years after we got out, and it was discovered that we were talking about this stuff, he said we would be reactivated, court-martialed, and we would never see the outside of Leavenworth. And that's if they were having a good day. Otherwise, they'd have us whacked and make it look like an accident or apparent suicide or something. That's how tightly this stuff is still controlled. In fact, years ago, I was working where I work now, and there was a security guard lady who was a prior Air Force, and I got to talking to her about this stuff. And she goes, well, I have a friend who actually works inside the Pentagon. Maybe I can call him and see what we can find out. So, okay. So I gave her some basic information. I told her what my name was, told her what the name of the project was when I was at Fort Bragg. And she goes, let me call my friend and see what I can find out. Okay. So about a week later, her friend called her, and she goes, what'd you find out? He goes, well, now, mind you, this guy was inside the Pentagon. And he said, well, I started typing in some stuff, doing some research, and before too long, I had some big brass come into my office. They said, what are you doing? And he thought real quick. He goes, oh, I'm just doing my own research. They said, if you value your career, you will never try and access that stuff again. So that's how closely guarded this stuff is. And all the documents, the videos, the pictures, and all that stuff, if they still exist, they're buried somewhere in a vault in the Pentagon. Because if the people actually knew this was going on, I mean, all the elected officials that authorized this, heads would roll, because we lost so many guys in testing, either brain fried or they died, and their families were told fairy tales about what happened to them.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. You jumped right over there for me. You had said that you were going to give some really, a lot of people talk about this and they'll say things, but they'll never get into the detail. I think sometimes because there's some people that, they're just telling a story from someone else and it's what they've heard, and they don't know what has happened because they just weren't there, but they've heard kind of some of the things. You being there, what were some of the things that you knew about that people would just, they just wouldn't even believe? And you said one of the things was frying someone's brain. What do you mean by that? What happened there?
When I say they fry someone's brain, what I mean is those of us who were the test subjects, and from what Sergeant Gray said, they got 30 new people a year was all they were allowed to get. And it's just like people's allergies or medication. Their techniques did not work on everybody. And if these people were coming to in the middle of some distic, twisted test, I mean, they could be scared to death and their heart could stop, or it chemical imbalance, and their brains would just get scrambled. It's like somebody overdosing on LSD or somebody overdosing on some heavy narcotic. Next thing you know, they're just a vegetable, and all they do is sit there and drool. And they did it to themselves. But when they give you this mind-altering stuff to where it puts you in what I refer to as a zoned-out state of mind, to where your senses still work and you'll still do what you're told, just like a programmed computer, but you're completely consciously unaware of what's going on. And one of them off the top of my head was we were at some kind of a secured lake somewhere, and apparently the overseeing general, there was a few of them. There was General Benary, General Sperry, and General Moore. And they were the overseeing generals of the project. And like I said, all the security personnel, they were all special forces of one flavor or another. And we were at some secured lake, and the general apparently wasn't aware to the extent that what Dr. Dirtbag was doing, because he would tell his higher-ups, his superiors, what he was going to do, and then he would, just to get their approval, and then he would manipulate everything to make it look like that he got approval for something he was really going to do. But if they had known that, chances are they probably wouldn't have done it. Like this one I'm about to tell you, we're at this lake.
We got 1 minute, just so you'll know.
It'll probably take me a little longer than 1 minute.
Yeah, I'm trying to get you there, buddy. We got another hour left, and that's it. I'm like, you have so many stories. I'm like dying to hear them all.
Oh, I could go for days.
I know it.
Give me a call, man. You got my number.
I know it. Trying to get as many out as we can. In fact, you know what? I'm just going to wait and let you save that for the next one when we come back, because I don't want to get cut off in the middle of it. And then keep in mind, we just have that 1 hour left, so I want you to get in as many of those stories, because a lot of people set us up and say these things are happening, but you can give us the facts of inside what you saw. So we like to certainly do that when we come back. So we are listening to Eric, the mind control guy. You guys have heard him many times call in, and tonight we have him on and letting him go deeper into his story. So when we come back, we'll start that one and try to get in as many as we can, because the time flies when you're on here. All right, more to come. Connie Willis with you, Eric the Mind Control Guy on Coast to Coast AM. Stay with us. And by the way, if you want to be a part of my show, please join it. ConnieWillis.com, ConnieWillis.com. More to come. Stay with us.